Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel. It is so good to have you back here again for a new episode. And if you are new here, hello and welcome. Why don't you stick around to see what kind of shocking but also very interesting true crime story I have for you today. And of course, please do subscribe to the channel. Now, before I get into the story, I have to give out a channel disclaimer. And that is, my channel is not meant to show any disrespect towards the victims or the families of the victims that I talk about in these videos. The information that I share with my audience is simply just research taken from different sources of the internet and compiled into a single video. And the main purpose of my channel is for educational and awareness purposes of the different types of crimes we face on a daily basis. And the content warning is that in this case, I will be talking about murder. So if you are sensitive to that kind of content, then viewer discretion is very much advised. Now, this week's case is actually quite a popular one here in South Africa, and I wanted to wait a while before I cover it because I wanted to have enough information about it because it is also quite recent. But it's also very interesting, and it'll make you wonder what kind of person is capable of doing something like this for such a dumb reason. And also something else that I wanted to mention is that different sources out there have different views about this case, especially when it comes to dates and the amounts of money that I'm going to be talking about in this case. So please do keep that in mind, that I'm not necessarily saying that the ones that I have are the most accurate ones. There's different other dates out there that have been put out, so they could be correct for all I know. And unfortunately, that's where I get my information from, the media. So I found a lot of conflicting dates, so keep that in mind, that the information could vary in terms of dates and amounts. But sit back, relax, and let me tell you all about the case of Rosemary Ndlovu, a cop that turned into a dangerous killer. Born in the 1970s, Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu was born in the township of Tembisa in the province of Gauteng. Now, some sources say she was born in 1975, some say she was born in 1978, and some say she was born in 1979. But basically, she was born in the 1970s. And she was born and raised in the province of Gauteng. And as a woman, she was described as a very average kind of woman. Now, there isn't a lot of information out there about how she grew up, how her childhood was, but overall it was said that she had a normal childhood and she finished her education at a high school level. And after she graduated high school, she then decided to join the South African Police Service. And then once she got in, she was stationed at the Tembisa police station in Gauteng. And then a little after that, she got promoted to the rank of being a sergeant. So you could tell that she was quite good at her job. However, even though Rosemary was a respected officer of the law who seemed quite good at her job, it was also said that she had a big problem of gambling, and she would often let it consume her so much that in some instances she would miss work to go gamble or to avoid people that she borrowed money from, more commonly known here in South Africa as loan sharks. And whenever she got paid, she wouldn't even try to spend a little bit of money on her family to help them because they were still struggling in poverty. She would actually spend the money on herself and just to feed her gambling addiction. Then one day, Rosemary started having the idea that her family should start having life insurance policies. And this is because here in South Africa, in poor families, when a family member dies, the funeral expenses can become so expensive that the family just wouldn't be able to handle them. So a lot of low-income households or low-class households in South Africa depend on funeral policies to help out with the burial of a loved one. And also these life insurance policies help the families be able to move on financially, especially if the loved one who passed away was someone who provided for the family. And since Rosemary was the one with a well-paying job in the family, she offered that she would be the one who pays the monthly premiums of these life insurance policies. So after this idea was brought to the table, her family agreed. However, they had no idea that they would be making the biggest mistake of their lives. One of her family members that she opened up a life insurance policy on was her cousin, Witness Madala Homu. And this happened after Rosemary spoke to Witness's mother, saying that she was quite worried about him and that she felt that it's important for him to have a life insurance policy in case anything happened to him. And after getting the go-ahead from her cousin's mother, Rosemary then went on to open up a life insurance policy on her cousin. but strangely enough, she listed herself as her cousin's wife in the documents. Then a few months later, Witness just suddenly disappeared without a single trace of him anywhere in March of 2012. His family, especially his mother, was very concerned about this sudden disappearance, and then Rosemary came up and offered herself to lead the search in trying to find her cousin. However, it didn't take long in March of 2012 before Witness's body was found in the town of Olifantsfontein, and it was determined that Witness was beaten to death. However, even though the family was broken by this discovery, there was little time and they had to prepare for the funeral of their loved one. But when the time came to cash in the life insurance policy that was taken out on Witness, all of the money was sent to Rosemary because she listed herself as Witness's wife. And so because of that, she also made herself the sole beneficiary of the entire life insurance policy. And when it came time to make the contributions for the funeral, to make matters worse, out of the 131,000 Rand that Rosemary received from the life insurance company, she only gave her family 200 Rand for the funeral, and she kept the rest of the money to herself. And in June of 2013, Rosemary called her sister Audrey to ask her if she wanted to have dinner with her. The two sisters hadn't seen each other in quite some time, so Audrey, although surprised by this, accepted that they should have dinner together, and she was more excited about spending time with her sister after such a long time. So she ended up inviting Rosemary to come over to her house so they can have dinner there, and that is exactly what happened. Then the next day, after the day they had dinner, Rosemary was at her house and she was trying to call her sister. But when she couldn't get a hold of her, she got a bit worried about this. So that's when she decided to call the police so they can go over to her house and see if anything was okay. Then on the next day, Rosemary decided to go back to her sister's place to go and check on her. And then when she arrived, she screamed at the sight of her sister on the floor with a lifeless look on her face. And once it was confirmed that Audrey had indeed passed away, it was confirmed that she had been poisoned and also strangled in her own house. And another thing that was discovered was that she had a life insurance policy that she took out on herself. And the sole beneficiary for this life insurance policy was her sister, Rosemary. And once the insurance money was out, Rosemary received 171,421 rands and 17 cents in insurance money. So now it's the second relative in Rosemary's family that had been mysteriously killed. Then once more in June of 2013, not long after her sister was buried, Rosemary's niece, Zanele Mota, needed a place to stay because she was experiencing some financial issues of her own. And that's when she decided to look for help from her aunt Rosemary. And Rosemary agreed that she could stay with her for a couple of weeks as she tries to get back on her feet. However, not long after that, Zanele Mota's body was found, and it was also discovered that she had been beaten to death. And like the other family members, she was also included in the life insurance policy. And Rosemary was still the sole beneficiary of the policy. And for this death, she received close to 120,000 Rand. Rosemary at this time had a boyfriend that she met in 2011, and his name was Maurice Mabasa, who worked for the US Embassy. Maurice was the sole provider of his family, so he always worked hard to provide for his mother and his other siblings. And even though his relationship with Rosemary had its ups and downs, they were still considered a happy couple, and at some point they even had a baby girl together. However, one night in October 2015, the couple had another heated argument, and before it got out of control, Maurice decided to step away for a bit by storming out of the house, leaving Rosemary and their baby daughter alone. And then when time started to fly by, Rosemary got worried when Maurice was not coming back home, and she said that's when she got worried and she tried to search for him. However, on the next day, Maurice Mabasa's body was discovered in the town of Olifantsfontein with over 80 stab wounds, and no one could say what happened to this man. And from the death of her boyfriend, Rosemary got a life insurance payout of up to 131,000 rand. And apparently, there was another time when Maurice's life was almost taken, but the attempt was actually unsuccessful. When Rosemary was in hospital with their daughter, she called Maurice and told him to go to their house and get more nappies for their baby. And when Maurice did this, as he was driving out of the property, he saw a hitman that was at the gate waiting for him. And when this man tried to shoot him, his gun fortunately jammed up, and that's when the man decided to run away from the property. But it was just quite unfortunate that the second time around, Maurice's life ended up being taken. Even though this time he was not shot, but he was stabbed to death. Then after this, 2 more members of the Ndlovu family lost their lives in mysterious ways. In 2017, Mayeni Mashaba, Rosemary's nephew and the brother of Zenalemota, was discovered dead in the town of Olifantsfontein. And it was said that the last person he was seen alive with before his body was discovered was his aunt Rosemary Ndlovu. However, this time the insurance company was starting to get concerned about Rosemary Ndlovu receiving so many insurance payouts in such a short amount of time. So with the death of Mayeni Mashaba, the company decided to do some investigation of its own, and that's when they found out that Rosemary listed herself as Mayeni's mother. And when they found out that this was not true, that she was actually in fact his aunt, the insurance claim was denied. Then in January 24th of 2018, the body of Brilliant Mashego, a nephew of Rosemary's and the son of her sister Audrey, was found in Bushbuck Ridge. And it was also determined through cell phone records that 2 days before Brilliant's death, he was last seen with his aunt Rosemary. And Brilliant had 3 life insurance policies on himself, and the sole beneficiary for all these policies was again Rosemary Ndlovu. But again, the insurance company did another investigation to find out that Rosemary still listed herself as her nephew's mother, and because of this, the insurance claim was denied from Rosemary. So now there had been 6 people associated with this woman who had died under mysterious circumstances, 5 family members and her boyfriend Maurice. And when Rosemary was seen as the common factor in all these murder cases, she was questioned about it, but she said she knew nothing about these cases, and she refused to answer any more questions related to these incidents. Then one day, a man named Njabulo Kunene, who was actually an ex-convict himself, went to the police to report an issue. And he told the police that a woman had hired him to be a hitman in the death of her sister and her 5 kids. And when he was asked who this woman was, that's when Njabulo Kunene uttered the name Rosemary Ndlovu. And that is when everything started falling into place for the investigators. It turns out that Rosemary wanted Njabulo to go to the house and drug Joyce, her other sister, so he can burn her and her kids alive in their own home so Rosemary can collect life insurance money on all of them. However, Njabulo felt that he didn't have the heart to burn a house with the woman and her 5 kids inside, and that is when he decided to go report this to the police. So after investigators learned of this plan, they decided to do an undercover operation to get Rosemary to talk about this to an undercover officer who posed as one of the hitmen who were going to help her out with this situation. Then this undercover officer, along with Njabulo Kunene, would actually request a meeting with Rosemary inside of Njabulo's car so they can talk more about the details of this entire plan. And this plan actually worked. Inside Njabulo's car was a hidden camera. And once Rosemary got inside, everything was recorded, including her saying exactly what she wanted the 2 men to do to her sister and her 5 kids.
Number 1. No harm. Number 1.
So then it was discovered that all the mysterious deaths in her family were actually caused by Rosemary when she hired hitmen to end her family's lives so she could cash in on their life insurance policies, since she was the sole beneficiary of all of them. Investigators got to realize that they were dealing with a meticulous and manipulative serial murderer, because even after she got arrested, Rosemary had no remorse for killing her family members for the sake of money. She had no remorse for killing her own family and for trying to kill her other sister and her young kids. She had no empathy whatsoever, and this was according to criminal profiler Lieutenant Colonel Elmery Mayberg, who testified in court against Rosemary. The lieutenant also testified that once she is found guilty, she will be classified as a serial killer. And she also testified that Rosemary never took any responsibilities for the murders of her 5 relatives and the murder of her live-in partner, Maurice Mabasa. She further added that Rosemary posed a very high risk and could commit more crimes in the future, and should therefore be sent to prison because she will forever be a significant threat to society for the rest of her life. During her trial, Rosemary behaved quite strangely, to say the least. She would be seen swaying from side to side while she was in her dock, and also she would be seen posing for the cameras when they focused on her. Then when she took the stand, she attempted to apologize to the family for everything that happened, but she still maintained her innocence, saying that she had nothing to do with this. She ended up saying, quote, "To all the families, I know they think I'm responsible, but that is not so. The truth is only known by God, but be that as it may, I would like to ask for them to forgive me." And it was also discovered that after she got arrested, she allegedly organized a hit on the investigating officer who actually arrested her. But that plan of hers never worked out. And she commented on this by saying that she was never angry with the investigating officer, and she understood that he was only doing his job. I wonder how in the world she could manage to organize a hit from behind bars. This has to show you just how dangerous this lady is. But at the end of it all, Rosemary Ndlovu was found guilty of all 6 counts of murder, and for that she was sentenced to 6 life terms in prison. She was also sentenced to 5 years for defeating the ends of justice, then 10 years for the crime of inciting to commit murder, and then another 10 years for the attempted murder of her own mother. And then she requested that she be put in a prison in Johannesburg so she could be closer to her family in case they wanted to visit her, which I don't think they ever will because of everything that she has done. It was quite obvious that to Rosemary, the lives of her family members were just money tickets for her, and it was also said that she only saw them as commodities, and that the lawlessness in which she committed her crimes threatens the very existence of society itself. The state then highlighted that Rosemary committed these crimes as a police officer, contradicting the very purpose of what she was supposed to stand for, which was to serve and protect. And Rosemary Ndlovu pocketed more than 1.4 million rands in insurance money on the lives of the deceased. What an episode. But yeah guys, that was the case of Rosemary Ndlovu, an officer of the law who took the lives of the very people she was meant to serve and protect. And what's terrifying is that these were the lives of her own family members, people that she actually had an emotional bond with. But she only saw them as meal tickets, and now she will never see freedom ever again. And we hope that all the victims of this case are resting in peace knowing that justice was served in their names. And that is all I have for you guys for today. Let me know what you think about Rosemary Ndlovu. Leave your comment down below, and also if you enjoyed this episode, please leave it a thumbs up by pressing the like button. That would seriously help me out. And also, thank you very much for hanging out with me today. As always, your support is what keeps me going. And if you are new here, please be part of the family and subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. That being said, I will see you guys in the next episode of the week. So until then, enjoy the rest of your day, take care of yourselves, and cheers.